Good afternoon and a warm welcome to everyone. My name is Serafina D'Souza and I'm the Assistant Editor of Construction World. Thank you for joining us for this webinar on designing the future of architecture. This is our first webinar of a series of webinars that we are conducting as a countdown to QAB. Special thanks to our keynote speaker, our moderator, to each one of our panelists, our audience for making the time to virtually be with us here today. Before we begin with our topic of discussion today, a short presentation on CW and our upcoming events. Could we have the presentation, please? 25 years in running, Construction World is India's largest circulated construction magazine with distribution across 800 cities in India and overseas. Its readership includes contractors, developers, architects, consultants, building material companies, construction equipment, and technology companies, among others. CW has been honored with several awards, including the CIDC Vishwakarma Award. Here's a glimpse of a few of our past edition covers. A large part of our focus in the recent past has shifted to the digital world. In fact, our monthly visits have now touched over 250,000. If you haven't already, do subscribe to CWOW, which is Construction World on WhatsApp, to get regular industry updates on the go. All you need to do is to avail of this service is give a missed call on the number seen on your screen right now. A part of our exclusive offering is CW Gold, through which you can stay updated on exclusive content by our editorial team. We're offering a 7-day trial for free now, so if you haven't made the most of this already, please hurry. ASAP Info Global Group is also offering a special Independence Day offer. You can get discounts up to 35% plus a 1-month free digital subscription. This offer is valid only until 31st August, so please hurry. On your screen right now are contacts in case you would like to advertise or subscribe to CW, as well as our social media handles. Do follow Construction World on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Very quickly, a few of our upcoming events. On 20th August, we will be hosting our very own QAB Awards, the Construction World Architect and Builder Awards. This is our 16th year of awarding India's top architects and builders and noteworthy projects, and the second year that we will be hosting the awards virtually. Our theme this year is React, to respond to the environment with awareness, creativity, and technology. Our guest of honor at QAB this year is Dr. Vibha Dhawan, the Director General of TERI. As a countdown to QAB, we're organizing a series of webinars, the first one being today on designing the future of architecture. Do also join us for the other 2 sessions on women in architecture and construction on 13th of August, for which we have architect Abha Lamba as the keynote speaker, and on 18th August for the one on design build trends, for which we have renowned architect Hafiz Contractor as the keynote speaker. Do also stay tuned for our CW Design Build Conclave and Awards, which we will be hosting as a hybrid event. It will be physical as well as digital. These will be held in Ahmedabad in September and soon thereafter in Hyderabad and Bangalore. May I now invite Construction World's Editor-in-Chief, Mr. Pratap Padode, to welcome the virtual gathering. But before that, a few words about him. Mr. Pratap Padode first blazed a trail in financial journalism with his chartered accountancy background, and then turned to addressing the needs of the construction, infrastructure, and manufacturing sectors through ASAP Info Global Group, set up in 1999. Since then, he has spearheaded India's enthusiasm for smart cities through the Smart Cities Council India, set up in 2014, and now lobbies for policy changes as founder and president of the First Construction Council. He has received the Asian Multimedia Publishing Award and the CIDC Vishwakarma Award as Best Journalist. As head of the First Construction Council, he has campaigned for steel quality, for emission norms for construction equipment, for changes in the Municipal Act, for changes in the land acquisition policy, as he continues to infuse his enthusiasm in building India into a powerful nation. Ladies and gentlemen, welcoming Mr. Padode on screen.
Thank you, Serafina. Good afternoon and welcome to QAB's first webinar in its series of webinars to the QAB 2021. Construction world is turning 25, so it's a great moment for all of us. Mr. Habeeb Khan, President Council of Architecture, our keynote speaker today, and esteemed panelists, ladies and gentlemen. My tryst with architecture began when I took on the mission to set a new benchmark for the industry by instituting awards for India's top architects and top builders 16 years ago. But then I realized that there was a tremendous gap in concept, planning, design, and execution when I undertook to launching Smart Cities Council India 9 years later in 2014. India's ambitions to be a $5 trillion economy means growing beyond Germany and Japan to becoming the third largest economy in the world. In his commencement address to the Jindal University of School of Banking and Finance, the former US Ambassador to India, Richard Verma, recently told young students that India has the youngest workforce in Asia. He elaborated, I look at the year 2030, for example, and I see an India that may lead the world in almost every category. The most populous nation, the most college graduates, the largest middle class, the most cell phone and internet users, along with the third largest military and third largest economy, all coexisting in the world's largest democracy with 600 million people under the age of 25. That's on top of the massive development that is taking place in India today, right before our eyes. Some $2 trillion will be spent on infrastructure in just the next decade. The bulk of the infrastructure needed for 2030 is yet to be built. That's why some 100 new airports are under planning or construction today alone. Richard Verma is right. The plan includes a spend of 111 trillion rupees over the next 5 years alone. Massive projects like Metro Rail, which are being executed in 30 cities currently. The Bharat Mala plan, which will connect cities, towns, and even villages with a network of roads. The Bharat Net plan that will provide internet to 6.43 lakh villages and gram panchayats. Airports, railway station development, ports, corridors connecting Delhi, Mumbai, high-speed rail, 100 smart cities, 500 Amrit cities, and so on. The agenda in the national infrastructure pipeline is huge, and architecture has a huge opportunity too. A recent example of the Statue of Unity project, which was brought to life in 33 months by Padma Bhushan sculptor Ram V. Sutar and Joseph Mena, the conceptual digital sculptor, was one which has a sense of satisfaction and a place of pride for an architect. Every architect would like his work of art to have the budget, the visibility, the sanction, the project execution speed, and the credit that this project has provided. With such mammoth plans ahead, why do we not see the future of architecture as the next biggest opportunity? If the architect is the one whose approval validates a plan, then why isn't an architect's professional competence set to be re-rated in terms of value? One reason is that planning of the city is being done in a silo mode. Now, planning is a process that helps to integrate various elements: a comprehensive transportation system, a services infrastructure, health and educational services, and the framework to maintain law and order. Just providing toilets in every home without linking them to a process of overall health and cleanliness is not planning. Architects and planners are trained to visualize problems within a larger framework, but this is something that is not being recognized yet. On February 15th, this year, the Department of Science and Technology issued 2021 guidelines for acquiring and producing geospatial data, including maps, in order to simplify the earlier restrictive regime instituted in 2016. The 2021 guidelines clarify that no prior approval, security clearance, or licensing requirement is necessary for the collection, generation, preparation, dissemination of geospatial data and maps within India's borders. I'm telling you this because with the help of latest available technology, it is possible to map large regional areas and prepare plans with virtual urban simulation systems to ensure the proper evaluation of different options. Qualified professionals, therefore, need to be actively involved in all stages of planning for the future. The National Highways Authority of India now mandates the use of drones for site surveillance. Monthly video recordings of all stages of construction need to be recorded. Architects now have to rely on software such as AutoCAD, Revit, 3ds Max, and Photoshop, ArchiCAD, graphics for visualization. This also means that one has to add a layer of cost on an annual basis. Engineering, particularly civil engineering, faces this challenge too, that most engineers gravitate towards IT. And then that's where the opportunities are. But growth, and that growth particularly is driven by overseas needs and their markets. In fact, in our recently concluded Construction Technology Summit, we found that the awareness of using BIM is very strong in India, but it is being used primarily for the overseas markets. Now we know very well that the need for architecture and civil engineers is a dire need in view of our national infrastructure pipelines plan of 111 trillion over the next 5 years, which includes social infrastructure, affordable housing, and so on. Why can't our young architects gain access to this opportunity? Why are we not creating a skyline that we can be proud of? Why do so many of our best architectural structures date back to the pre-independence times? Why can we not collaborate on building our beautiful nation? The dream of 1.4 billion Indians is to see India as a powerful and yet a beautifully designed and sustainable nation. Our eminent panelists today will help us navigate this dream. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Padode, for perfectly setting the tone for today's virtual event. We now have our keynote speaker, Mr. Habeeb Khan, President, Council of Architecture, address us. But before that, a few words about him. Architect Habeeb Khan graduated in architecture from VNIT and completed his master's in architectural design from the University of Illinois in the US. He worked in Philadelphia after his master's degree before returning to India in 1990 and started his own private practice. He has received several awards, some of which include the JIIA Best Interior Design Award by the Indian Institute of Architects in 1998 and the IIA KAFF Young Architects Award in 2000. Architecture to him is a passion, total commitment, and something to enjoy and indulge in. He believes that architecture will be responsive to traditions, climate context, and be environmentally and ecologically responsible. Architect Khan is also involved in teaching architecture and design in several architectural colleges all over the country. He has also been actively working with the government of Maharashtra on a few policy framing guidelines. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to Architect Habeeb Khan to address our virtual gathering. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon to all the audience, delegates, architects, students, Christopher, Sanjay, Jairam, Rajiv, Sheila, Pratap, Serafina, and all my friends present out here. I bring warm greetings from Council of Architecture. It's a pleasure to be amongst our fraternity always, and I look forward to interacting, exchanging thoughts and ideas that not only enriches my own personal being, but also enhances the quality of life that I desire to live. The topic of discussion today, designing the future of architecture, is something that I've been talking about in quite a few forums. And I've realized that how can one design a future? Because future is something that no one knows how it will be, what it will be. What we can do by our actions, by our roadmaps, and by our thought process is to probably make it a little better. And that is what the effort of all of us should be. When we talk of architecture, To my mind, there are two vital components of architecture. One is profession and the other is education. And these two come naturally to me because the council regulates the profession as well as education. And when it comes to how and what would be the future of architecture, is something that makes me think a lot and something that defines the decisions and the policies that we make at the council. And we all talk of sustainability these days. We all talk of being green and eco-friendly and whatever terms you would want to use for this concept. But to me, we have to relook at the concept. We have to question the standards of the thought processes that we have in this mind, in our minds. We have to break the compartmentalized boxes that we are all in. And we need to look at this concept of sustainability, of being humane, of being sensitive to the earth that we are living in, to the nature that we have inherited. And we need to actually start working in concrete terms rather than doing lip service, which we do in webinars and which we do in papers and in write-ups that we publish. We have to break the dogmas that we all have about this concept. And I am saying this with a little purpose because I feel that in the garb of being sustainable, which shall be our future, which shall be the future of architecture as well, we have to do really 360 degrees overturn to the thought process that we have at the moment. We have to look at the roadmap of the future development of our country. Nations are built not only by architects, but by collaborative efforts of our co-professionals like the engineers. There are thinkers, politicians, citizens, and the outcome of this nation building, the most visible outcome of this process is by the architects, the real estate, the built mass, the built environment, the infrastructure, and so on. So the responsibility on the architects is a huge one, and we have to understand and take the responsibility on our shoulders because the largest carbon footprint, the largest damage to the Mother Earth and to the cause of this so-called sustainable efforts is by the architects. And we architects have to be responsible and sensible to understand what we are doing to the place we all are living in. Collaborative efforts, working in teams is the future of architecture, architectural profession. And the faster we understand and the faster we imbibe this in our minds will be good for not only us, but for the entire profession as well. Architect, to me, is no longer the leader of the team. And we are seeing that all over, not only in our country, but abroad as well. But definitely, architect is the most responsible part of the team. And that responsibility has to be imbibed in our thought process, in our minds. To me, the individualistic practice is history. The corporate structure is going to take over the architectural profession. And we all need to understand and refine our practices, refine our processes to become more organized, become more systematic, deliver in time, and with definite processes. And that is the future of practice to me in our country. And gone are those days when the architect used to be, if you have read Fountainhead of Ayn Rand, the Howard Rocks or whatever, it is a collaborative process, and we have to carry each and everyone who are involved in the stake of building infrastructure together. We have to look at horizontal avenues. Pratap was just telling us what is the possibility and the opportunity that architects have in our country in the coming future, in the near future, in the next 10 years. And we have to also look at other aspects apart from metros, infrastructures, roads. We have to look at a very important element, which is the rural sector. We have to look at the agro sector. wherein architects can very meaningfully contribute. To me, empowerment of the rural economy will take care of the majority of the ills that our urban centers are facing these days. And architects need to no longer look at architecture as an elitist profession. We need to look at something which is, unexplored by architects. And that, to me, one sector is the rural sector, where we can empower the rural economy, and we can have a very meaningful role in the development of the rural sector. We have to question internationalism. We have to question the senseless production of inhumane architecture. We have to question the involvement of a larger economic module that we all are succumbing to, and empowerment of the local economy through Make in India initiatives, maybe through our craftsmen, to builders, to local labor, to be vocal for local in the future of architecture, profession as well as education. And India needs architects for its development and growth. And housing is another sector where majority of our population is devoid of proper housing, proper accommodation to live in. We have to look at architecture through a different lens. I've been telling that, especially the pandemic and the subsequent lockdowns have shown us, the pandemic has not broken the world, but has shown our own broken world to us. And we have to understand the new roadmap that architecture should have, not only at the larger level of a nation, then another level of the cities, urban centers, but individualistically as well. We have to be responsible enough to understand that architecture affects the quality of life of its users, which is an intangible contribution which an architect makes to society. We have to make aware the society of the intangible contribution that an architect makes, which governs the quality of life of its users, of its fellow citizens. And this is our moral responsibility, and this will play a major role in the future of architectural development in our country. Economy, like we all know, was tottering before the pandemic, and it was shattered during the pandemic due to the lockdowns. And architecture and related fields are the first casualty in this process. And we need to look ahead of architecture as a profession which will be based on cocoons of economic growth, insulated from various influences which are not in your control. And this will definitely change the profession of architecture. This will definitely change the face of architecture in time to come. And unless we understand this, unless we imbibe this process of insulating ourselves, I'm not talking of economics, I'm not talking of the economic policies or economic theories. I'm talking of something very, very being something which is very contextual, something which is very self-contained, and something which will not be affected by happenings outside your cocoon. And this is a thought process which needs to be discussed and thrashed out. Brainstorming has to be done, wherein how we are able to not only protect ourselves as a profession, but also people related to our profession. Like I'm telling you, craftsmen who are involved, the artists, the builders, the labor, the local labor, the migrant workers, and so on and on. The method of teaching architecture will have to change. Technology will play a major role in the future of architecture. We've all seen what a 3D printer can do. We've seen so many other technologies, softwares that we all talk of. How this is going to change the development of architectural profession, it will change our architecture. And unless we as architects understand this and try incorporating into our practices, into our thought processes, we probably will be doomed. The method of teaching I was telling you is changing because of the online methods of teaching that we are here and which is going to stay for a long, long time, and the coming in of the national education policy, which has a lateral outlook, which has a horizontal development, wherein any stream can come into architecture, any credits. Architecture will be based on apprentice learning and credits and other systems, more hands-on experiences, skill development, and so on and on. So we need to understand that when this process of learning to be an architect changes, the product will also change. The outcome of the learning will also change. And this will also change the profession of architecture. This will also change the way our buildings will look, the way our cities will look, the way our nation will look. And something, if we are able to do this within a short period of time, we will be able to produce spaces and design buildings which will change the quality of life, which will alter the quality of life of our fellow citizens. And also architects have to understand that unless we start contributing in the welfare of the society and building up of the nation, and we take collective responsibility and understanding that we are contributing in the build-up of our nation, we will not be able to contribute meaningfully. And I'm sure these points will be discussed in the following panel discussion, and I'm looking forward to being amongst you all. And thank you so much for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to share my few thoughts. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Architect Habeeb Khan, for the very inspiring keynote. We now move towards our very enthusiastic panel discussion. Before I hand it over to our moderator, Ms.Sheila Sri Prakash, a quick introduction to our panelists. Ms.Sheila Sri Prakash is an internationally acclaimed architect, urban designer, and sustainability expert who founded Shilpa Architects, Planners, Designers in 1979. In July 2011, the World Economic Forum invited her to be part of the Global Agenda Council for Design and Innovation, where she formulated the Reciprocal Design Index to establish, document, and incentivize sustainable design of cities. She is widely consulted on matters of urban sustainability by several governments and is also on the board of the Chennai Smart City SPV as an independent director and urban expert. Thank you, Architect Sri Prakash, for joining us today. Professor Christopher Benninger, Principal Architect, CCBA Designs, is one of India's highly decorated architects. He studied urban planning at MIT and architecture at Harvard, where he later also taught. He settled in India in 1971, founding the School of Planning at Ahmedabad as a Ford Foundation advisor, where he continues as a distinguished professor. His name appears alongside Jeffrey Bawa, Charles Correa, and Balkrishna Doshi as one of the 6 recipients of the Great Master Architect Award in India. His recent book, Letters to a Young Architect, focuses on the practice of architecture in developing societies and was also on the top 10 best-selling non-fiction books list for 18 weeks in India. Thank you, Professor Benninger, for joining us. Mr. Sanjay Puri, Principal Architect, Sanjay Puri Architects, is a strong believer of the thought that every project should be designed contextually, evolving spaces that are perceived in new ways. He believes that each design takes cognizance of the climate and integrates sustainability in a cohesive way. This ideology is reflected in the extensive work done by the firm in the 3 decades since its inception. Architect Puri graduated from the Academy of Architecture, Mumbai in 1988, worked with architect Hafiz Contractor, and then founded Sanjay Puri Architects in 1992. Thank you, Architect Puri, for joining us. Mr. Jairam Panch, Managing Director of Turner India, has an overall industry experience of more than 30 years, handling various leadership roles at both the project and corporate level. He has been instrumental in establishing the Turner brand in India by securing and delivering large-scale contracts, notable being the world's tallest statue, the iconic Statue of Unity, and the ongoing projects for 2 of the largest and busiest airports in India, Bangalore and Delhi. Under his guidance, Turner India is currently managing large-size projects worth over $5 billion of construction volume. Mr. Panch is passionate about promoting international standards of project management practices in construction projects in India. Thank you, Mr. Panch, for joining us. Professor Rajiv Mishra, Principal, JJ School of Architecture, is an architect and urban planner based in Mumbai. His special interests include issues dealing with sustainable urbanism, community architecture, heritage conservation, Technology in Building Management, Classical Arts and Education of Architects and Planners in a Changing Society. He has been exploring this field extensively through various research studies, trying to bridge the gap between education and practice. Professor Mishra has an extensive teaching experience of over 27 years and has since 2015 been appointed as the director at the Directorate of Art, Government of Maharashtra. Thank you, Professor Mishra, for joining us. And without further ado, I now hand it over to our moderator, Ms.Sheila Prakash, to begin our discussion on designing the future of architecture. Over to you, ma'am. We have 1 hour for this discussion.
Good afternoon. I'm very happy to moderate this session. Thank you, Construction World. Thank you, Pratap. And it's so nice that we are able to meet up. I think it's been almost 2 years since any of us met personally, because earlier it used to be at least twice a year in this forum or in the other. And 2 years ago, we were thinking that it was climate change that was a major challenge, paucity of resources, which was another major challenge. So architects as responsible and responsive designers of the built environment, how do we ride and how do we overcome these challenges in harmonious way? Today, out of the blue, we got this pandemic, and this pandemic has all set us in a state of shock, because I think it is unprecedented, and I don't think any of us would have even imagined that we would stay locked in. Our children would not go to school for 2 years, and we would not travel, let alone travel abroad, travel even within our own state and within our own country. So, but all said and done, I think we are a very resilient bunch of people, humanity, especially Indians. We always have the knack of bouncing back with a vengeance, if I may say so. But this pandemic has given us certain learnings that, we need to redefine the trajectory of our so-called growth. We need to redefine built spaces, because I think it's built spaces which are very claustrophobic and constrained are not going to be the norm anymore. We need larger spaces. People need their own social space. We cannot have lifts that are, designed for 5 and which in reality can accommodate only 2. So these are challenges that we have to face. So I would now like to ask, we have a beautiful mix of professional expertise in design. We have Mr. Habeeb Khan, who's in practice and governance. We have Christopher, who is in practice, in education, and a writer, and therefore, it's so much more influence and, ability to provide inspiration to the younger generation. We have Sanjay, who's done such fantastic work and who's doggedly pursuing sustainability, green design, responsiveness, etc., and creating wonderful structures. We have Mr. Jairam Panch, who is managing mega infrastructure projects. So all that India needs. But what is the way in which we think in a big way, and therefore training the young? So I do have little tweaks to the question, to the main questions, but let me start with my screen. Mr. Habeeb Khan, you have just spoken and you have told us so much about what is in store for architects, how we need to collaborate, how we need to corporatize our approach, how we need to be local, how we need to, I think, go into the rural sector, etc. And teaching will change because of the educational policy. So I just wanted to ask you a question about, with reference to governance, with reference to the COA. How do you think the role of the architect? You said we are not leaders, but we are responsible members. So that puts us in a very difficult position, because responsibility, unless you have teeth, you can't ensure that your responsibility is complete. So how do we straddle this? How do you think that architects can become a little more powerful in the creation of the built environment to ensure that, what is responsive and responsible is really achieved?
And that's a very important question, and my response to this would be a little different, because I feel that there are a couple of things that we architects need to do ourselves in our own fraternity to have more power. See, respect cannot be gained; it has to be earned. Similarly, power cannot be thrust on you. We have to earn our power. You have to earn your uh, your teeth. You have to grow your teeth. Teeth do not come overnight, and that will happen when we as architects are united. I mean, look at the first. I mean, I have so many instances right in front of me where I can say that we are pulling our own pants down in public, our own fraternities. We do not hesitate to wash our dirty linen in public. We do not hesitate for our own personal gains to question the authority of the council or question our professionals or the profession itself and so on. We are the ones who undercoat. We are the ones who do not follow ethics, moral ethics that we need to follow. This is one aspect which I think, when it comes into our thought processes, into our built-in thought processes and responses, we will become more powerful. We need to educate. I told you once again, we need to educate our society about the intangible contribution that an architect makes and the importance of an architect in a society. We need to educate ourselves. No one will come and educate on our own behalf. There are, now coming to the council, these are some issues. There are larger issues, I think, which will need a lot of discussion on. Coming to the council, we at the moment are having a regulation in place which governs the profession. We are elaborating that, we are working on that, and I'm sure that probably in a year or so we'll be able to come out with a more powerful, I wouldn't say, but encompassing regulations which will probably streamline the way we are working at the moment. So, but unless I strongly believe that teeth have to grow and grow steadily until you can start biting, and secondly, we have to stay united.
Thank you so much, Habeeb. But I've always felt that, while realizing our designs, we have the client on one side and we have the statutory bodies on the other side. And, for convenience of getting the statutory sanctions, etc., sometimes the design intent is watered down. The design priorities are watered down.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that, because it depends. See, I mean, there might be.
So
this might be a case. This might be a case with majority probably of people. But if you are sure of what you want, if you are convinced about your ideas and thought processes, and you're able to convince your client of what is right, what is good, what we have thought, what you conceived, I think statutory authorities can always be brought along. I think there are so many good architects. I mean, Sanjay is one of them who is working with the authorities yet not compromising. So there can be so many thousands of Sanjay Puris, or there can be thousands of Christophers. And it's basically succumbing to a law or a statutory body or authority wherein you want do it for your personal gains without understanding that damaging your own personal project, but also damaging the profession in the long run.
Thank you. Thank you, Habeeb. Professor Christopher, how are you? Good evening.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. So, I wanted to ask you about, under the circumstances that we are today, with the planetary challenges as well as the pandemic challenges, how do you see the future of campuses? Because you're building a lot of campuses. So is there any change in the people, the management of those campuses? How are they going to make it work? Are they too large? Do we have to rethink? How do we fit and meld, work and home?
Sheila, that's a good question. That's a good question. But I think the issues facing the future of architecture really come from three sources. One is the government, and the Council of Architecture is, after all, a wing of government. It's based on an act. The other one is our architectural profession itself, how we educate, and the third one is society. Now, when we talk like this, we talk that architects should be more sensitive to environment, architects should think about the pandemic, architects should be honest. That's all kind of mushy. Let me talk about some things that could be changed. For example, architects pay GST 18.5%, while lawyers and accountants, I think, pay nothing. Now, this is a disincentive for people to go to architects for architectural services. The government charges L1 fees. L1 fees means the lowest bidder. I know that the IIT Tirupati went for 1% of a very large 700 crore project. And I can name so many more. Ambedkar University in New Delhi went for 1.3. The minister complained afterwards that it was too high. So the government needs to get serious about architecture. The government needs to see architecture, for example, could follow the Council of Architecture fees and let us compete just for the technical competition part of the competition. We could each put up designs and a panel could decide on the architect. Not the way the formula works, even if you're number one in technical, you might get 60 out of 60 or 50 out of 50. But if you've got the highest fee, you get 0. And a guy who had maybe 50 points and he had the lowest fee, he gets all 30 points. So this is a totally unworkable situation. Now, when it comes to hiring foreign architects, my teacher and my guru, Fumiko Maki, did the Putnam Museum, and he confided in me that he was paid 15.5%. A state government paid him 15.5%. They would pay an Indian architect 1 to 2%. So these are things which we need to change. We can't keep talking hairy-fairy. Architects should be more sensitive to environment. Architects should be sensitive to the pandemic. Architects should be more honest. Let's try to, another point. We're taking how many students a year? Often 80 students. Some of the schools take 120. I'm estimating we have, say, 500 schools of architecture. It means about 40,000 new architects are joining us every year in our fraternity. When they graduate, are they capable, even if there's 30,000? Are they capable of participating? They will be the voters in our democratic system to choose the council members, to be the president of the Institute of Architects. Why don't we have an examination like other countries? After working for 2 years, you take an examination, and if you pass the exam, you become registered as an architect. And I think even practicing architects like me should be told, Benninger, you might be 78 years old, you might have been practicing for decades, but you also take the examination. Let the people who are meritorious rule this profession. What we're doing is we're creating a mob scene of people who are poorly educated. They're coming out in mass. Frankly, most of them were not going to get jobs this year. And we recently hired, over the last 6 months, we've hired about 17 people. And the last time we advertised in June, I think we had almost 1,700 applications for some 4 to 5 or 6 positions. Now, to me, these are the issues we need to talk about. The future of architecture depends on the capability of our profession. It depends on government supporting architecture, paying decent fees. If you look across all the projects awarded by all the state governments in the last 1 year, I think you would find the average fee would be someplace a little below 2%. Can people, like you were saying, can they be sensitive to space? Can they be sensitive to environment when they're paying really terrible fees? And then how do they pay good salaries to the youngsters now? So these are things we can change. They're manageable because they're quantifiable. Let's not talk about unquantifiable things then. How do people think, how sensitive are they to it? All architects are sensitive to the environment. All architects are educated in their colleges now about green buildings, about TERI, and about LEEDs. So I don't think we need to sort of preach to people to be sensitive about things. We've been doing the green building thing for the last at least 10 years now. And I think we need to get serious about our own profession. What are the kind of rules and regulations we work on? How are projects awarded? And, let's not talk about the pandemic. Let's not talk about environment. To me, pandemic and environment are one brother. The pandemic came because the environment is getting destroyed. They're interrelated. People think the pandemic happened because some frog jumped out of a box in China or a bat fell from the ceiling. This all happened because the environment is deteriorating. And I think, but that's another discussion. I think we need to talk about our profession. How do we take new people in the profession? How do we monitor whether they're really capable or not? And what kind of conditions are architects working under? If they're working for 1%, expect nothing of them. They'll start looking for kickbacks from suppliers, kickbacks from vendors, kickbacks from contractors. In my opinion, anyone who works for 1% is a kickback artist. It is not paying their taxes. So I think we need to talk like this. We need to talk speaking. Who are these people? How do they function? How does the government function? Why are they giving projects for 1%? And can we run a profession like that? Can we run a profession without having an examination of all the students graduating from Pluto? We have 30 schools of architecture, 30. And it's something like the stock market. Sometimes we lose 2 schools because they're disqualified. Sometimes we get 3 more. And I think this has got to stop. We need to get serious about a profession being a profession. So I'm looking at the future saying, let's move forward by taking quantifiable steps. Let's have an examination after 2 years of service in an audit. Most of the kids work 2 years and they want to go to America. It's surprising the huge number of students who think the way forward to become an architect is to try to apply for an American college or a British college or an Australian college as soon as they can. That is not the way we're going to help our country. So we need to have a focus. We need to understand which are things we can change, which we cannot change. And if I want to be a little harsh, with more and more students of architecture and more doubtful colleges, the actual level of our demography, let's say we have a nation of architects and the population of that nation is growing by 35,000 a year. What is the average intelligence of that nation? What is the skill level of that nation? What is the sensitivity of that nation? We're actually forgetting all this and talking big things about the environment, big things about the pandemic, and I think we need to talk big things about our own profession. So if that's my idea of what the future is about, is how we modulate, how we pattern, and how we control our own profession. Then we can get that profession focused on all of these big ideas that we have.
Thank you,
I'll
Chair.
for a second, if you don't mind, Sheila, I'll come in for a second to say
Thank
what
you, Christopher. Yeah, please.
I'll just come in for a second. We have about 22 to 23,000 architects coming out. Out of that, the average attendance is about 60%. So we have about 18,000 architects coming out. We have stopped giving new colleges. I'm just informing Christopher. And then we have a prospective plan in place. And we are closing wrong institutes with bad practices, and so on and on. And we are working on the examination that you talked of, Christopher. And if all goes well, we should have very, very soon that in place.
See, I know, Habeeb, that you've tackled this problems I mentioned. Maybe you're the person who's tackled these problems more than anyone else. No? I'm actually saying this not as a criticism of the Council of Architecture, but to support you in these steps which I think you're taking. How many students did you say per year would be coming out?
18 to 20,000.
18 to 20,000. Okay, less than I thought, more than we should have. Okay. I see Rajiv Mildra there. Okay, Sheila?
Yeah, I just wanted to, yeah. Yes. Yes, please. I actually.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Rajiv. So, Sanjay, you, I just wanted your take on this and what you think. Would you be modifying your approach? Would you be redefining your approach, or would you be reinforcing your approach? What do you think is the way forward? See, this is like the Industrial Revolution. This timing. So, when the Industrial Revolution happened, sea changes happened. So this is the fourth industrial revolution. So technology is galloping. We have, a lot of machine learning, AI, virtual reality. So I know Sanjay has worked on some VR in his projects. So do you think that is the way forward? Would we come to a stage where we have virtual spaces and no real spaces, Sanjay?
Well, so in keeping with this thing, I mean, you look at where I am right now. I'm in
Yes.
I'm in Rajasthan, in a village called Nokha.
Very lovely
And
port.
and I just actually reached a site. So the beauty is, I'm not trying to say where I was. I'm just trying to say that we are in this small little village in Nokha, okay? And yet I'm connected with you all, and I was really scared that this connection may not happen.
Yeah.
So I'm connected with you. We are speaking on a platform that is visible to so many thousands of people, and that's actually, the construction site. You can see in the distance. I don't know if you can see it. It's far away.
Right.
Anyway,
Right.
it's right here. So this is technology.
Yes.
I mean, we've been monitoring this project, sitting in our office, but then actually once in a while that whole need to come and physically experience a space while it is being done is important. That's why I'm here. This is a 3-hour drive from Jodhpur after a 1.5-hour flight from Bombay. So the point is just that technology, of course, is here to stay, and it is changing the way we are working. It has become so easy to collaborate with people across the world, sitting in remote places. You want some landscape input from somewhere, or lighting input from somewhere else, or I mean anything. That day we wanted to do study the whole approach towards adobe construction. There was a way it was done, but are there any new methods to make it a better and more long lasting kind of solution? So all of that is now happening with the help of technology, with the help of sharing idea, with the help of all these sharing platforms. And yeah, of course, as you mentioned, VR is another level altogether in experiencing a space. I mean, it's unreal what you can actually experience. So you have a 40-story building, and you can actually go up to the 28th floor and see what you see, and you can go to 16th floor and see what you can see. So it's just something else. And there were projects where it's taking a long time for the client to understand what it is, and finally, when we showed him the whole VR model, walked him through, he understood, okay, yeah, this space, what was looking less is actually enough. So, yeah, technology is here to stay and is going to impact us in a lot of ways. And as Habeeb was saying, I mean, 3D is going to take this to yet another level. I mean, literally everything that you thought possible, I mean, not possible to do, is going to be absolutely possible to do. Look at what these guys have done. Mario is a friend, and he's done that Italian, that house done in 3D printed, which is all circular. It's beautiful. And if you can do that kind of complicated stuff and so interesting, the spaces with 3D technology, we are going to see some other level of change in the next few years. I mean, it's already started, but it's going to gallop. So if you don't stay abreast with what all is possible to do, it's going to be tough to work.
Yep. Thank you, Sanjay. Very optimistic. And I think all this technology will also bring down the costs ultimately. And
It will.
I hope that the costs go to the end user and not to, middlemen and.
But I want to add one thing. What Christopher said is so 100% true. I mean, where are we really going here?
Yes.
So we've got, I know, Habeeb, you're doing something for the education, and I hope it gets done fast and implemented, because the level of students that you see coming out of colleges today is literally unbelievable. I mean, they really don't know anything. And what is the point? After 5 years of education, is that the kind of, I mean, you're literally coming with no knowledge of anything from any aspect. So that is one thing. The other thing is, of course, about the fee. I mean, it is insane. There was somebody who had said, that this XYZ semi-government body in Delhi is doing a lot of projects of this size, that size, and I happen to know somebody, I can introduce you. So I said, yeah, but I've heard that they only pay, 1.1 or 1.2%, including structure, MEP, PMC, and all of that. I said, it's impossible. I said, I don't even want to get introduced, and I'm not interested. I mean, it's not possible. But the thing is that there are a number of people who are doing it, right? And this is going on, and this has not happened yesterday. It happened like many years ago. So where is this going? I mean, we are working at the most ridiculously low fees anywhere in the world. So how are we actually expected to do what we're supposed to do in a holistic way?
Let us come down to 0.8, Sanjay, now, the same body.
What?
The fees has come down to 0.8.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's just going down on a daily basis. And then you have all these. So there are there's so many things happening. Architects are undercutting each other. I don't know what to say and where to say it. But there has to be a minimum. It's literally, there should be a minimum fee for a project of a certain level. You can quantify that. And it should be that if an architect doesn't adhere to that or quotes lower, they are, their license is taken away. There has to be something as drastic as that. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Every day you hear something new.
Same thing happens. Incidentally,
the most unfortunate thing is that I think we've been talking about this fairly long. I recall, I think at least 25 years ago, we started talking about this and the Architects Act being obsolete, and how the COA has to or the IIA has to step in and debar people who are undercutting, but nothing seems to be happening. So all our hopes are pinned on you, Habeeb. So
incidentally, is the same body, I'm sure, what Sanjay is talking of. I happen to have met the head of the same body discussing the same issue, and he had only one thing to say: ki it is your fraternity who is at fault. We are willing to give fee whatever the artists demand, provided there is no one else working on that fee. You tell your fraternity to not quote. If everyone quotes 3%, 5%, and no one quotes lesser than 5%, then we'll be forced to give you that for 3, 5, whatever percent that you would want. But it is your fraternity which is doing the job. I mean, that's all right. I mean, it's a very moral talk or something like that. But I mean, leave aside that, we are working on a manual of architectural profession and services. And in that, the fees is also prescribed in a totally new fashion, in a totally new way, wherein we have worked out various kinds of text, various kind of structures, various kind of contracts and everything. And we are trying to put that into regulation. We'll be very soon publishing that manual, which is a recommendatory at the moment, but we're trying to make it mandatory. So let us hope. I mean, we all want you to be together with us.
Yeah, look forward to it. Yeah,
that manual will change the way our profession is at the moment.
Yeah. Thank you, Habeeb. Now, we were all talking about the quality of architectural education. So, Rajiv, so I'm sure that with the online schooling and things like that, you must be having even more of a challenge. So, how do you address that? And is there what's your take on that?
Yes, sure. I would like to thank all the panelists for their views, some of which I think are quite acceptable, except for one point. I just want to tell you, uh, the students who are being taught in architecture schools in our country, okay, are absolutely not at fault. I would like to tell all the panel members, the students are always good. It is just that the exposure that they get to the kind of faculty members available in colleges of architecture is not good. The kind of people who are selected to teach in architecture school is the real issue. Okay.
I think that's majorly because if people are not in practice, then they immediately as freshers join as lecturers, and their knowledge is questionable. I think we've
काय
lost.
शाळेनं लावलंय कोण बसवलं त्याला तिकडे
I think Rajiv is having connectivity problems. We can't hear you, Rajiv.
Can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yeah, you're better.
Yeah, I'm better now. Okay. See, I am standing in the lobby of Rajabai Tower Library in Bombay University. If you are able to hear me, can I continue? Sorry.
Yes, please.
So I am here basically to let you know that unless we improve the selection procedure of selecting the right kind of candidates to teaching community in architecture schools, we are going to face this problem. Okay, I think we have to be very stringent in being able to select good faculty members to teach in architecture school. One. Second, I would say is that the architects coming to teaching must at least have 2 to 3 years of practice knowledge. They should have worked with an architect, they should have done some projects themselves, and they should have been exposed to at least a footing of a building as to how a footing is being casted. Until then, we should not allow them to teach. Not that they are good or bad. It is just that unless they are exposed to practice, they wouldn't be able to understand the needs of the student. And third thing, which I think Habeeb Khan has been trying to do, he has established something called design chair in all schools of architecture, where practicing architects are actually brought in to teach in architecture schools to become the guiding torch. I think we need to invite more such practicing architects to become adjunct professors in schools of architecture based on 10 years of practice, 20 years of practice, and 25 years of practice. So, like we have a cadre of professor, associate professor, and assistant professor, I think we need design chair for each of these cadres. And if they come in, I think probably the standard of the direction of education would actually change. I think I think because we have lot of teachers less exposed to practice in architecture teaching, we are having this problem. And lastly, I would just like to say, and this is my experience of online teaching mechanism that is happening for last 18 months. Students have become bolder, students have become more vocal, students have become very good at their presentation because now the interaction with the teacher is one-to-one. Earlier it was group interaction with teachers in groups, but now individual student has gained confidence to present their work and they do it very well. So I feel they have become more open, they have become bolder, and they interact more online, which is what I would like to share. And lastly, there are many students, or let's say about 10% of the students who join architecture not to become architects. They want to use architecture degree as a stepping stone to do something else. And I think the exit policy, which has been brought in by Council of Architecture this year, that you can exit the architecture course after 3 years, will be very magical because a lot of people would like to go into building profession, do construction management, do quantity surveying, and do other matters related to architecture and building construction will find this very beneficial. So the quality of architecture students and the quality of graduate architects have been an issue, and this can be solved and this can be addressed by the new policies that can be brought in. Completely agree with the exit exam. Professor Christopher Benninger, I think it should be done. And I think exit exam will change the attitude towards the seriousness in learning about architecture. I completely agree with the views that have been expressed by Sanjay. No students not knowing anything. I know, but there are not everybody like that. There are few students who are really very serious to learn under you, under your internship, and they come hungry for learning because they think that you will expose them to the practices which they have been not able to go through while they have been in college. So they are lean, mean, and hungry. They want to learn, and therefore they come to you, and they want to take the best out of their experience with you. So don't feel that they're very smart. They just don't want you to know everything. Okay, they just want to take the best out of the experience that they wish to have it with you. Okay, the younger generation is too smart for us. I think they are much ahead of their times, and we just need to be away.
Rajiv, you come from
Can I say? Sorry.
See, I just want to make a point. I agree with Sanjay totally. I agree with Sanjay totally. I think Rajiv is lucky. He comes from the oldest, perhaps the best school of architecture in the country. Most of the kids who come here, if you tell them to put dimensions on a building in a 5,000 square foot plot, they don't know where to draw the line, whether to put the whole plot dimension outside the plot. They put dimensions all over the place. They don't even know how to dimension a drawing. I'm saying this because to me that's the most basic thing. You don't need design sensitivity, environmental sensitivity. Technically, the kids are being shortchanged. Basic things they just can't do. You'd be surprised. I spend time teaching people where to put dimension lines, to put a north arrow. All of these things, it's like taking people in. Sometimes I joke and say my studio is a kindergarten. It's a kindergarten of architecture. Country has the same problem. But
that's true.
This is happening.
Another doubt that I have with educational institutions, and maybe Habeeb can help in this, that as far as research goes, I think there is absolutely zilch going towards the architecture front. Because I think yesterday there was somebody in the office and he mentioned that the last big research innovation that was done was precast concrete, which was about 25 years ago. So, I was thinking that, young minds keen to research should be given opportunities to research, and and maybe giving them a basic training of technology and all that for 3 years, and then sending them even for 2 years on an internship. They will be able to learn much more, which means that the load on the educational institution would be less.
See, I do agree. I do.
But at the same time, because then you have to pay the children to teach them. So that becomes a big hindrance. So, if that fee they take, because there are lots of children who come from out of the state, from all over India to my office. And then, they find it so difficult to live in a place. So, they keep saying that they have to pay fees to the college, and then they have to pay for their stay, and the stipend that we give will not be enough. And we always feel that we are teaching so much, it's the learning that matters, it's not, the paying them. So there is a big disconnect between, all the stakeholders. Now, I think
I'll come in there.
Yeah.
I'll just come in for a second before Jairam comes in. This gap between practice, profession, and education is increasing by the day, and it is mainly happening because we have put ourselves into watertight compartments of academicians and practicing professionals. Such is not the case in a medicine profession, wherein a teacher is also practicing medicine. He's a practicing doctor. He does operations, he sees patients, he does OPD. We have put ourselves into compartmentalized, watertight compartments. And that is the problem. And this has to go. We need to bridge this gap, number one. And the other issue is teachers who are teaching working drawings or production drawings, shop drawings or whatever have never built themselves ever. They have never, done, and they're teaching how to make drawings to build those buildings. And that is another issue, which needs probably, a lot of discussion on it. And coming to research, yes, there is a dearth of research in architecture, allied fields, and basically it happens because lack of funding that is there for architectural research in our institutes, in our private offices, and so on and on. And to mitigate that, we have just started an urban studio project. If you all know, it's all for the faculty, young faculty. We are funding research on how the cities should be, what are the sustainable models of the cities. We have just floated that research project through the TRC in Pune, and such initiatives at such a small fraction of a cost can do a lot of work towards augmenting research in our institutes. I'm sure institutes should also take example of this and start research at our own end. We've just started this urban studio project.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Habeeb. Talk to you about that. Jairam, I think Habeeb with his 4:15, is it time
if
for
you
you
don't
to
mind,
leave?
guys, I have a flight to catch at 6, so I'll have to rush off.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure to be amongst all of you, and Rajiv, Sanjay,
Bye-bye.
Christopher, Jairam, and Sheila.
Bye.
Thank you so
Have a
much.
good night.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Thanks a lot. I'll catch up later. You can brief me on what happened, and so I can, we can discuss this further. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Okay.
So
everyone.
Jairam,
Bye.
yeah.
Okay, very
You're
sorry.
sitting
Just a
off.
minute. I also have to leave. Sheila, I have to leave
Okay, Sanjay.
because I'm
Lovely,
already on
lovely.
a site. The battery is also gone and everything is in a mess. So thanks a lot.
Okay, so we have to
That
look
was
for
very
new
insightful.
technology again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
So hope
Bye.
to catch up soon sometime. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Sheila,
So Jairam, yes?
go ahead. I think let Jay Ram speak. He hasn't got a chance yet.
How are you, Professor? How are you doing?
Everyone is fine.
All good. All right. Yeah, go ahead, Sheila.
So as far as you go, Jairam, you've been a little away from the actual practice, education of architecture, but you are sitting monitoring the work of architects and trying to bring best practices in PMC, international standards, standardization, etc. So I would want to know, you are doing large, huge projects. So what has the repercussion on your projects been? And what do you foresee as the new trend? What technologies do you think will help architects and PMC project managers to see that they are more efficient and bring about the... See, I always feel that, when we start on board, and especially for these long gestation projects, which go about 10 years, we see so many people on the management team itself changing. And sometimes you find that the only people who are stationary are the architects and the PMC. So, so even to describe the design intent and carry it through as a single thread to the end becomes a challenge. So I would like your inputs on this and your experience, and how we could, of course, collaboration is the key. So,
Anyway,
yes.
thanks, Sheila, and thanks everybody for having me here. It's really an honor to be part of this QAP series again there a few times earlier. So I'm an architect myself and an urban planner, and I'm a product of CEPT, Professor Christopher Benninger, along with Doshi and all. So I did my planning. So I know I've experienced architecture and experienced that life. Before I thought what really excites me is delivery of projects. So what I would first start off by saying is, Habeeb is not here, but our professor, Mr. Deshpande, used to tell us, architects have got a larger contribution to the society than a doctor, because architect's mistake is seen for this generation and the future generations, whereas a doctor's mistake is buried, right? So I think it's extremely important, therefore, when we are wearing that hat, we have a high degree of responsibility in terms of what we are trying to do for the entire community. I think in the run for the day-to-day stuff, and we need to carve a name for ourselves, I think most of the architects have become more individualistic rather than collectively contributing to something what we think as, this is the change that we need to be bringing to this entire community. I'll give you an example of during the pandemic. The pandemic, I think, provided the best opportunity for the architects who control the built environment to all come together and say that, hey, listen, this is what we as a fraternity could be doing to improve the healthcare system in the country. We as a community, we could come back and look at what we need to do for several people who are dying of housing and things like that. These are the two sectors which got really impacted. And this was something that was missing, and we could definitely have played a larger role. It doesn't matter, because as a group, we are very powerful. And with someone like Habeeb heading the COA, they could have had a lot of impact on this thing. How did the best of the developer bodies go to the government and ensure that the construction sector be regarded as an essential services? You know what I mean? So we could continue the business of delivery of the projects, construction of the projects that could not. So I would sincerely urge that, as architects, we can be more powerful. We just have to add more teeth to it, and collectively we come back. At the end of the day, it is all about that. The next thing that I would like to focus is on, as architects, be it education. When I look at it from an school standpoint, we need to call them schools. I like that name rather than calling us College of Architecture or something. It has to be still the School of Architecture. You learn how to design, you learn the basics, you learn a lot of things to go together. I think you all said that, I would probably echoing it. It's a university industry connect. We talk about when we are doing management courses, we talk about when we are doing others, the university and industry need to connect together, and that too more frequently. And this is the only recipe for making most of the students who come out, they are at least 10 to 20, or even I would say 30% industry ready. What I mean by industry ready is you will not have certain basic issues, as they do not know how to design, they do not know how to look at dimension, they don't understand what is being taught to them. So I think those are some of the important things, and university industry connect has to happen all times. And what Professor Rajiv was talking about, the quality of the people, quality of teachers, it is directly proportional to the number of colleges we have opened. The number of colleges that we have under architecture is now, it's like grown, it's mushroomed. I remember when I did in 90s, I know there were just 30 colleges. When we used to go for NASA, we could kind of meet with each other and kind of figure out, these 30 people and all. Now it's like East Zone, West Zone, North, yes, and there is, I don't know, it's kind of different.
I agree.
Yeah, so that exactly tells where you're getting the quality of the people. So the teachers, we know we only get better by practice. We only get better by practice. We don't get, that is the only way a doctor becomes really best. We get really better. I'm sure Sheila is a better architect now than what she was 30 years back. It's just all of us. It just comes to that. So that we need to understand. And one thing that I would like the schools to incorporate is, please focus on project management and delivery. It's extremely important. Let the architecture schools focus on project management and delivery. Let it not be unidimensional, just on focus on architecture. I want to produce a better design. I know design is very important. Please focus on how the delivery needs to happen. You can call people like us who can come and give excellent practical examples of what you need to be when it comes to delivery. It's very important. Then talking about innovation, we talked about BIM or virtual reality and things like that. My sincere request to all practicing architects is, please incorporate BIM into your day-to-day into day-to-day design. It's not something, it's a showpiece. And I am at the delivery end and I'm looking at some of the drawings that come. I'll tell you, I can read drawings very well. Some of the drawings I can tell you it's just garbage. So it's just given for the sake of giving some drawings. It's not coordinate between the fellow professionals. It's not in a buildable format. So we look at the design, and our job is to make sure that we are able to construct it. So it's extremely important that we take the best use of technology. I mean, it took us ages to move from the manual drafting on a T-scale to what we went to an AutoCAD, and now we just let's take it further all the way up to the delivery process. When you focus on that innovation part of it, the rest of the innovation that happens on site, we can do it. The other thing I want you to do is please design to a purpose. When you design, think about the cost, think about the time, think about the construction methodology, think about several things. Please, let's think about architecture in a different way so that we can put everything into the design so that when it comes out, engage with all these people so that we are getting a much better design output, which is easy to build. So those are some of my, I would say, important things that I would think. It's focus on something that we can do, and please focus on delivery so that our life becomes very easy. And I would sincerely request most of the architects around, please, let's kind of take India to the next best level we can on the healthcare. How can we design, cost-effective and efficient medical colleges, hospitals, nursing homes, care centers? Because we all know they are short. How can we really make that happen? And we are definitely ready to partner with you in terms of delivery of these projects. Thanks.
Thank you, Jairam. Thank you. It's very reassuring because, generally my thing, sorry, my thing on PMC is that, their mandates are for costs and time. And, sometimes the design intent goes to the back seat. So, I think you need to integrate that. And at Turner, I know they do. But generally, PMC mandates are only for cost and time.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Because we have never had good PMCs. The PMCs have been the IPCs, where the forte of the business is something else. It could be leasing, it could be something else, facility management. And then it's an early entry, when they get into project management. It's beyond, what you call as manpower supply. It is not manpower supply. It's extremely important that we are a part of, and we should be brought in early so that the design is being questioned.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
See, I wanted to comment about healthcare. See, we had the pandemic. One of my clients, Mr. Azem Grimji, I'm building a university for him in Bangalore. He donated 2,000 crores of rupees over the last 18 months to various healthcare, feeding people things. And we were thinking, as architects, well, Mr. Grimji has maybe a lot of money, and he has people in the field working in primary education. What can we do? So we contacted the settlement commissioner of the state, and we said, we want to do a plan for the Sassoon Hospital, 2 million square feet, 170-year-old complex. So we donated services, did an audit. 50% of the buildings there, well, let's make it a bit much, but about 600,000 square feet have to be torn down. And we did an audit of the facilities. We looked at the location of things. They're not in the right place. There's 6 different city plots. How do you integrate them? And we did a free service. And I'm telling you, we would have charged about $1 crore to give that service if somebody would come and say, do it for us as a project. Now, the part of that is we finished that project about 4 or 5 months ago. Today, right today, in the Secretariat, there's a meeting going on to decide whether to give 100 crores for that project. So we have such a positive feeling that we can do some social work. Architects can also do something called philanthropy. It doesn't have to be in the form of rupees, but it can be in the form of services to public health facilities, even primary health centers in villages and in districts. We can help them to have better facilities. And it does result in change. So I think when you mentioned healthcare, I think it's an area where it's almost a specialization where architects can go in maybe after 3 years if they want to do 2 years of focus on healthcare facilities is something they can do. I think healthcare and education, primary education, rural education, see, you have a lot of people working on your sites. They're not trained properly. We need to do more technical training. We need 1,000 technical training schools in this country. More than architecture schools, we need technical training schools. And I think these are all exciting things for the future. Another thing that's happening in my firm, if I look over the last 2 years, for the first time, we're doing 23 metro stations. We never imagined doing metro stations before. And keep in mind, my client is a German client. Of course, the Tatas are partners, so that's the main client, financials from Germany. We're doing in Shanghai, we're doing the world's largest brain research center in Shanghai. And the people doing my laboratory designs, Wallner, are in Germany. And my landscape designer is in Boston. So I think Indian firms have to start thinking in the future. Don't think the borders of India is the playing field. We can also work in China, we can work in Singapore, we can work in the Middle East. You know, I've done a lot of work in a small country called Bhutan. I've done work in Sri Lanka. So I feel the future also means spreading our wings. Don't think that we can only work in India. We can work all over the world. We can hire consultants from Boston, from Frankfurt, from Australia, this place, and we can do very interesting work. And I think Turner is also an international company, and I think you also are into that.
Thank you, Christopher. And I think we are at 4:30, so we need to close the session. We didn't have any defined questions, but I think we had a wonderful discussion, and we got all the inputs from all the experts in their fields and in their focus areas. So thank you so much. I would now ask Serafino to get back on the stage.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all our panelists. Very insightful discussion. We truly hope that we are able to design the future of architecture in India, and that too soon. Thanks to our keynote speaker, Architect Habeeb Khan, our moderator, Architect Sheila Prakash, our panelists, Mr. Panch, Professor Mishra, Professor Benninger, Mr. Sanjay Puri. Thanks to each one of you for making the time to be with us for this virtual discussion. To our audience, thank you for joining us. Do not forget to stay tuned for our webinars on women in architecture and construction on 13th August and Design Build Trends on 18th August. And of course, the Construction World Architect and Builder Awards on the 20th of August. Thank you, everyone, and have a great evening.
Thank you. Thanks for organizing. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Bye.
Should catch